We were all wrong about God Valley, the mysterious event that shook the One Piece world to its core prior to the beginning of the series, the legendary battle between Gold D. Roger, Monkey D. Garp, and Rocks D. Zebek. And you know, it's actually kind of funny, until writing the script for this video, it never even occurred to me that all three people involved in this fight that we know about were members of the D clan. Like, individually I knew that each one of them were D's, but for some reason it just never clicked in my mind until now. Anyway, we as fans have been waiting 4 whole years to find out what really happened on this day since it was first mentioned back in chapter 957. And all this time we have speculated and theorized from the moon and back exactly how this fight went down. Asking questions such as, why did Zebek attack the world nobles? How is it that both Garp and Roger had to team up to take him down? Why would Roger even want to help out the celestial dragons? And for that matter, why would Garp either? So many questions about this one specific battle that happened years before the beginning of the story, and that we already know the end result of. Zebek is taken out, the Rocks pirates disband, Roger finds Shanks in the treasure chest, and Garp is labeled as the hero of the Marines. But even though we knew how this ended, I can guarantee you chapter 1096 showed us that none of us could have predicted exactly how this whole thing went down. For starters, I don't think any of us could have possibly predicted that Ivankov's little sister Jenny would have been the one to kickstart this entire event. Mostly because she was only introduced in the previous chapter, but even if she was around earlier, who would think that someone so small and cute would have this mischievous side to her? And honestly, she reminds me of a young Nami. As we know, even prior to being forced to work for Arlong, Nami was already a bit of a troublemaker, and Jenny does mention in this chapter being a skilled thief and wiretapper, so the two do have a bit in common. And while many believe, myself included, that Jenny is indeed Bonnie's mom due to her connection to Kuma and her apparent gluttonous, if that's even a word, it is important to note that up until now, we have still yet to see an official colored version of the character. So you just swap out the pink hair that everyone assumes she has and replace it with orange, and there you go. We have Nami's never before seen biological mom. And again, I personally believe that she is in fact Bonnie's mom. It just makes the most sense based on the way the flashback's been going so far. But with the way Oda writes her in this chapter, and the fact that she's more than likely already dead in the present day, just like Nami's birth parents, I can understand why some people would have that idea in their head. Anyway, like already mentioned, Jenny makes use of her wiretapping talents to leak the location of the Celestial Dragon special hunt, hoping to lure in pirates to attack the world nobles, giving herself and the rest of the slaves a chance to steal the devil fruits and use their powers to escape. It's a pretty genius plan and one I might devote a whole video to for itself, but the important thing to note is that it works for one simple reason. Prior to this event, the world government had launched an attack on Hachinosu, stealing something or some things from the pirates there, and I think what was stolen were the devil fruits that are being used as the prizes for this inhumane competition, or at least one very important fruit. Because these fruits are the sole reason why the Rocks pirates decide to attack God Valley, seemingly hoping to steal from the nobles the grand prize, which is heavily hinted to be the fish fruit Mato Seryu, aka Kaido's devil fruit. And we do know that Big Mom gives Kaido his fruit on the same day as God Valley, which we see her steal from Ivankov halfway through the chapter, though they don't know what fruit it is at the time. Which, you know what, it really makes me wonder, did Big Mom give Kaido his devil fruit knowing it was the Mythos Owen? Or did she give it to him thinking, if it's something good, he'll owe me big time, or if it's something bad, then I can at least make fun of him for it? The answer to that question is really going to change my perspective on their relationship. Anyway, we now know that, like every other time we've seen them in danger throughout the series, the Celestial Dragons were attacked due to their very own actions, because Garp reveals that they were the ones who ordered the attack on Hachinosu, which is why I believe that's where they got at least one of the devil fruit from. Otherwise, why attack the island? Now, Garp is summoned to God Valley to protect the Celestial Dragons by Fleet Admiral Kong, which I think this is the most we've seen him do on panel in the entirety of the manga. And of course, Garp turns him down because his personal belief is that Celestial Dragons can, for lack of better words, go fuck themselves. Which, I mean, yeah. And he says that to his boss while relaxing on some random beach on some random island, showing the kind of confidence that we all secretly wish we had. And the only reason he agrees to go to God Valley is because Kong lures him in by telling him that Roger's on his way there as well, which immediately gave Garp Hisoka levels of excitement over the idea of finally taking down his pirate rival. So he immediately cancels his vacation and heads straight for the island, though it is important to note that even when he gets to God Valley, his sole focus is fighting Roger, who seemingly arrives around the same time, who was seemingly also there to steal at least one of the devil fruits. And you know what? It just dawned on me, that's why they find Shanks inside one of the treasure chests, because they still would assuming that there's a devil fruit inside, only to open it up and find a baby safely tucked away instead. So this really begs the question, how does Shanks end up inside one of those chests? And like, I really want to believe that if he truly is Garling's son, that he puts Shanks inside one of the chests believing that it was the absolute safest place for him to be. But the much more likely scenario is that Garling willingly threw away his son in order to keep Roger from getting the devil fruit that was originally inside the chest. Either way, whatever fruit Roger's crew was after, they ended up not being able to get, but I would definitely say that Shanks was an even trade for it. Also, want to point out, because I'm sure some fans will believe this to be the case, but it is extremely unlikely that Luffy's Devil Fruit was on God Valley at the time, because knowing how important and dangerous that fruit truly is, and the fact that the Gorosei were actively trying to find it, if they knew it was in one of those chests, they would have definitely confiscated it immediately. Anyway, the question still remains, with both having vastly different goals for being there, what made Roger and Garp choose to put their differences aside and work together to take down Sebek? Was he just that much more powerful than the two of them that they had no choice but to team up to take him down? Because it really didn't seem like that prior to this event, because both of them came to the island without much worry about him being a real threat to them. Which leads me to think that perhaps Sebek managed to get his hands on one of the more powerful devil fruits on the island, which gave him just enough of a boost to be able to overpower both Garp and Roger in a 1v1. And his defeat, despite having such a powerful devil fruit, could be what led Kaido to his belief that powerful Haki is the end-all be-all in One Piece. But here's the thing, Garp wasn't the only member of the world government present at God Valley who likely would have had the power to step up and face off against Sebek, as Garling, his Holy Knights, and one Saint Saturn were each on the island actively working to squash both the pirate invasion and the slaves' escape attempt. So why did Garp end up working with Roger instead of one of them? And the only answer I can think of, besides the fact that Garp more than likely hates them more than he hates Roger, is that they were just simply too busy dealing with the other members of the Rocks Pirates. As we know, a majority of them are very heavy hitters in the One Piece world, and we have 3 new members introduced in this chapter who we know absolutely nothing about. And just from the looks of their design, they do all look like they might be pretty strong. So more than likely Garling and the rest of the Holy Knights had their hands full. But Saturn, I have absolutely no excuse for Saturn, because seemingly his only concern was stopping Kuma and the rest of the slaves from escaping, which we know he fails at, and not just fails horribly. As we find out, Kuma managed to save at least 500 slaves from God Valley. So I have zero idea what he was doing during the battle. I guess he probably just thought the whole thing was beneath him and decided, you know what, Garp's got it. Now, after Kuma's face-off with Saturn, that's where the God Valley portion of the flashback unfortunately ends, with the only extra bit of information we get is an off-screen confrontation between Roger and Sebek, and discovering that the whole thing was covered up by early in his career Big News Morgan, who only reports on the heroic actions of Garp. But even that little bit of extra information does tell us something about what happened next. Obviously, the confrontation between Roger and Sebek is likely the start of the legendary battle that until now was the only thing we knew about this whole event, and the fact that the world government chose to cover up the truth about the event tells us something big happened after what we saw, something that could likely reveal certain truths about the world that they worked hard to keep buried, perhaps something about the Void Century, or even perhaps something about Emu? And whatever it was, it's likely Sebek would have revealed the truth to the world had he not been defeated at God Valley. And this actually begs the question, were Roger and Garp actually the ones to take down Sebek? Because it could be that Sebek truly did discover something that he wasn't supposed to know and was planning on sharing that information with the rest of the world, that Saturn actually did decide to step in and take him out, probably finishing him off for good after being defeated by his 2 previous opponents. But that's just my personal theory based on what we've seen from these flashbacks. There's still so much we've yet to discover about the event, and we'll just have to wait until Oda is ready to tell us what actually happened on the final day of the Rocks Pirates.